Hello and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Top 5 video. Today it is going to be the top 5 quest lines in the game, and honestly, there are so many quest lines that are really good, but I had to choose 5, and I'm kind of going to circumvent the rules a little bit via the handy top 5 creators tool of the honourable mention. Oh, and one little disclaimer, it's completely my own opinion, and if you do have a different opinion, or there's some other quest that you like, or maybe you're a Horde player and you've done something that I've missed, please leave it down in the comments, because I always like to do follow-up videos to these top 5s and kind of long discussion videos, in which we can all have a bit of a chat about what everyone thinks. So, without further ado, let's get into the top 5 list. And coming in at number 5, we have, well, the relatively unassuming Red Ridge Mountains and the John J. Keeshan quest. I know it may seem odd putting in a kind of, perhaps maybe a little bit random little gimmick series of quests, and really, yeah, I probably can see that being weird, but I just enjoyed this quest line so much at the time that I did it. I think I really did like how the quests were mechanically very varied. Each one was different, there was no real repetition of mechanics, and overall, just that variation kept things interesting. And what I did like as well is that there were plenty of regular quests that surrounded this chain, so it really did feel like quite a special thing, and I just think that it was a very well paced piece of content as well. For an example, you would have that maybe more slow-paced stealth mission, and then right after that, you had the thing in the tank with Rambo up at the top screaming, shooting all the orcs. Really, really cool. And then, oddly enough, I actually think the characterization was really well done. And yeah, okay, it's Rambo and his buddies, I get that, it's a parody quest. But you know what? Just from a little miniature plot arc, I think those characters were pulled off really well in a really interesting manner, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel the feels at the end, but I certainly cared. I thought, that was really well done. Classy Blizzard, nice. So yeah, more quests like that would be pretty cool in the game in general, though I'd be a little bit worried that they would fall into the common trappings of turning into a Miss of Pandaria styled trollolol kinda gimmicky quest, and it's weird, I think this is just one of those quests that perhaps could have been extremely just random, gimmicky, not that much fun, but just for some reason, the way that it all came together within that zone, it just made sense. And I guess one last little point to say is that the juxtaposition between like Lakeshire and Red Ridge just being this kind of idyllic and really rather serene place, and just sort of the comparison between that and you and Rambo in a tank going mad with, guns, and then the big dragon at the end and all that sort of stuff. It was just great. I mean, yeah, damn, really solid quest, and I really did enjoy it. Okay, so coming in at number 4, we have patch 5.1, actually, and I think that both of the storylines here were really very solid. As an Alliance player, I had a great time the whole way through. Perhaps it started off a little bit slow, but once things started to ramp up and we got, say, the Purge of Dalaran, I was really getting into it. It was the most that I'd ever got behind Jaina's character. And that outburst of emotion really does give a lot of, just kind of like weight behind a character that makes them feel a little bit more like a real person. And I think that was definitely nice to just see how it all played out. I think a common trapping that sometimes happens in games, and actually Anduin is a character that displays this, is that characters often don't really react to the situations that they're put in. If you look at Jaina's character, she had her city destroyed, and now insurrection within her ranks. Well, when she actually reacts to that, it's her being a believable human character. The amount of crap that has happened to Anduin Rin, and that guy is still Mr. La-di-da neutral. Ugh, just watch Noble87's video on it, but similar problem. Still though, my main point is that they actually handle it well with Jaina, so well done Blizzard. And actually just from looking at the Horde side of things, especially just when I made my Lorthamar lore video, I really like how they portrayed Lorthamar in this. He really previously just didn't have much of an in-game character, but he really did come off as being a capable leader who was very interesting and certainly had the intentions of his people very much at heart. And he was also quite well voice acted, which I thought was very fun as well. So yeah, overall, both Jaina and Lorthamar were very well done, and I think one of the few things that I did enjoy about the 5.2 story quests was the interactions between those two characters. Alright, let's drop the story for a minute and talk about the quests. So the quests were in general quite varied. They often had different mechanics, settings, and stories. What this meant is that there was a good deal of variation there, so every few days when you had one of these quests unlocked for you, you knew there was probably something interesting to go and see. It meant that the quests just didn't feel boring, and I really do like that difference in settings. Another thing really that the patch 5.2 quests suffered from was that they were all in the same setting and tileset, whereas these quests, they really did take you around the world. And I think that was great. It really did feel like a part of this overarching story, and that there were really big in-game events happening. So I think that was definitely very cool. Then another point is that I don't think the quests were like as gimmicky as some of the patch 5.2 ones. Often in patch 5.2 I just felt like the level of gimmick was a little bit too high, and I felt like instead of just playing my character in World of Warcraft, I was constantly wondering, oh, what's the new thing that they want me to try to work out, or the new thing they want me to do. And fair enough, introducing new mechanics is absolutely a good thing, but I just don't particularly like how it turned out in patch 5.2. So yes, I think 5.1 was a very good balance in that regard. Then another point is that I think it served a really great purpose in terms of introducing us to the Divine Bell storyline, and then setting things up for the Rebellion in patch 5.3, and then the eventual Siege of Orgrimmar in patch 5.4. Doing a questline like this was a very good move, because it got players invested in the story of the expansion. Even if you were not a raider, you still got to know what was going on, and you got it delivered in, frankly, a very good manner. It wouldn't be this high, or, well, it wouldn't even be on this list at all if I didn't think that it was very worthy, so yeah, absolutely a great way to just keep the questing going, and more so just keep the story going. Another interesting point, actually, just talking about Warlords of Draenor just briefly, is that Blizzard have acknowledged that they understand a lot of people enjoyed the patch 5.1 quests. They've also acknowledged that a lot of people enjoyed the Timeless Isle style of things, but perhaps would have liked a little bit more substance to it, which probably means that they will blend both the 5.1 story quests and the Timeless Isle exploratory stuff when they're making new zones in Warlords, and especially too with telling the story. So I'd really be happy if in Warlords we would see expanded versions of the patch 5.1 story quest model. I think that would be really effective, and it would be a great way of driving forward the story. Often the story that happens from patch to patch is basically relegated to a quest log or, you know, some piece of trailer or something. Well, in this it was actually told really well through the gameplay in a rather protracted and long quest chain. That was very good. And then finally, my last point about these patch 5.1 quests is the spacing in between them. So you would get one every, every 2 to 3 days perhaps, and I think that was actually a really effective way of doing it. It meant that you didn't burn through the story, and you got to appreciate it bit by bit in a way that actually meant that you understood it. Now, of course, there is the obvious reason here that they didn't want you to burn through the patch's entire story in one sitting, and I think that's certainly fair enough. Though in terms of a storytelling mechanic, it worked out quite well, because these are events that needed, there needed to be time between them in terms of just making chronological sense. So in that regard, it was just really a very nicely designed bit of content. Alright, so that is it for patch 5.1. Overall, very good, and I hope they continue that style of story quest in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have the Death Knight starter zone. Oh man, I really love this one. I think I started actually just after I had finished Dragonblight on my main, which was back then a warrior. And I think that what it did a great job of was just introducing your character to the quest chain itself, and this is more in a kind of characterization in field part. One of the first quests you did was butchering the unworthy initiates. It set the tone, and that was a tone that would be carried forward and then eventually turned on its heels. That is a great little bit of storytelling, and in my opinion, a very nice way of starting it off. Also, it started off in a rather low-key way. It's not like you started off this questline by doing some giant epic thing. No, you were butchering a bunch of people chained to a wall, which absolutely makes sense in terms of how evil the Lich King / Scourge are supposed to be. Then, I think it was also just really nice to play as a villain for once. I'm not gonna lie, I had a blast killing those Scarlet Crusade scum and butchering their peasants and villagers. It was great. Also, one of those quests that you did back down there, it was that time when you had to go down and collect the arrows that the Scourge archers have been firing from the hill. But one of the other quests down there was just to kill the peasants, and these peasants were so easy to kill. You just death grip them over, slash them, and they were gone. Now, you may think that because there was no difficulty in the combat there, it was a pointless quest, what it actually did was it reinforced the idea of you being this terribly evil, murderous Death Knight, and just lording your power over these innocent people and murdering them. It, in terms of a storytelling device, once again reinforced who you were and what you were doing via the actual gameplay. And often MMOs specifically miss out on doing that well, so when World of Warcraft does manage to pull it off, it's very nice. Okay, then next, it had a cast of recurring characters who you interacted with on a current or consistent basis. So just all those various like trainers and princes and death knights and things like that. And I think they were actually characterized quite well, and they were very well written. Each one had their own little niche, and I think this really did help reinforce the sense of urgency. I'm in the zone, and then also some of their quests, and not voice acting, but just writing, kind of reinforced the brutality of the whole affair. Then next, I think there was a very good balance with the quest mechanics. There were plenty of regular style quests which were offset by some of, in my opinion, the best designed vehicle quests in the game. Flying around on the Frostworm was great. It's another example of how a well-timed increase in player power can really make you feel great. And then, oh, of course, there's also the quest where you hid inside the minecart and then used the ship's cannons against all the Scarlet Crusaders. That was damn cool as well. But absolutely, yeah, I just think that well-paced gimmick quests can be so well done, and really it's a similar point to what I made with the John J. Keeshan ones. Sure, there was maybe 4 or 5 gimmick quests there, but in the scheme of things, there's maybe, 50 quests in that zone. Most of them were regular quests, so those 5 quests in Red Ridge really did stand out. Once again, we see the same principle being applied here in a very effective manner. Next up, we have the attack on the Light's Hope Chapel. I think the scale of this was really impressive at the time, and that moment where it started raining blood as you charge into battle was just really brilliant.
The skies turn red with the blood of the fallen. The Lich King watches over us, minions. Leave all the ashes and misery in your destructive wake.
And then, of course, the ending, for me personally, was very enjoyable because I am a complete lore nut. I think Tyrion's comeback was completely just badass, and the whole story with Darion and the formation of the Knights of the Ebon Blade was fantastic. I'm not going to go into it anymore in case there's some people here who haven't actually done this quest for themselves. But yeah, if you haven't, just go make a Death Knight. Do this. It's completely worth it. So overall, a damn good questline. And actually I have a little bit of a Warlords of Draenor snippet to talk about here. So Alex Afrasabi recently said in an interview that the introduction experience for Warlords of Draenor is going to be in some regards similar to the Death Knight starter zone in a few ways. And I'm really glad to hear that because this is one of my favourite questing experiences, so if we could bring that forward into the Warlord starting experience, I think it would be pretty damn good. Alright, so coming in at number 2. We have the Argent Crusade attack on Icecrown Glacier. This is, in my opinion, just one of the few times where our actions really did feel like they reflected the world, and I suppose I'll talk more about that just in a minute. So first of all, I think that Tyrion's strength as a character was really well played here, and it added a bit of, well, I don't want to say emotion, because perhaps it wasn't emotion, but it just added narrative weight to all of our actions. That made your actions just feel more important, and I don't know, just the mixture of Tyrion being a great character, and of course being voiced by Bernard Hill, who, by the way, is the guy who plays Theoden in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. It just worked so damn well, didn't it? And I think also the sense of urgency was great here as well. Having all those Argent NPCs out fighting while we gallivanted through the battlefield just made it feel like this large and epic struggle. Since it wasn't an instanced-off scenario, it just felt like a pretty seamless part of the world, which once again just galvanized the effectiveness of what you were doing. Then, of course, the actual military operation itself, well, it made a semblance of sense. There was a lot of reasoning behind what you were doing, and this made the quests immediately understandable. You didn't actually have to read the quest text. The story itself was told by what you were doing. So once again, just another great example of storytelling through gameplay, and you'll probably notice as a common theme, the quest lines that I think are the best have often got quests in which your actions are basically just as much of a storytelling device as is the quest text. Alright, so Next, what I want to say is that instead of every quest being a major gimmick fest, they, for the most part, limited it to just the canon section. This meant that the canon section felt really out of the ordinary, so the increase in power was all the more exhilarating. And then from quest to quest, you could see the Argent Crusade's progress. This is, in my opinion, the best use of phasing in the game, and it was just a really satisfying bit of direct feedback to the player's actions that just made it feel like what you were doing actually had a bit of a point to it. It was great. And then, of course, the follow-up to Save Crusader Breitenbard even, was a fantastic questline, and it was actually a really touching tribute to one of Blizzard's deceased. So, yeah, overall, just very well done, and it's just kind of a lovely thing that they did that, you know? Alright, so that is the top 4, and as is the tradition with top 5 lists, we're going to go through some of the honourable mentions. So first of all, we have the Rogue Legendary Quest. I haven't played it, but it looks cool, and that's pretty much why it's here. I watched a video on the World of Warcraft official YouTube page, which is actually just a bit of a walkthrough with the Rogue Legendary, because it's, in terms of story, very much relevant to Rathian, so if you do have a minute or two, just go have a look at that on YouTube. Then the next honourable mention is the Warlock Greenfire Quest. I'm not a Warlock, but I think it's really nice that Blizzard can put out a bit of content which really suits a class well, and basically just test its mechanics to the limit. It's awesome, and I hope that I get a Hunter one soon. Then next, from what I hear, the Horde Stone Talon quests are worth a mention. Now, I haven't played it myself, but the reason it gets a mention from me is because so many people have recommended it to me that I simply just can't pass up the opportunity to recommend it to people. And then my next honourable mention is the quest in which you get to save Rathian's egg in the Blasted Lands. I don't remember it 100% because it was a few years ago now, but I do remember enjoying the hell out of it, so absolutely it's worth talking about. And then another honourable mention is the Matthias Leher quests in Icecrown. And yeah, I just think these were really good. It provided a nice little bit of character to the Lich King, and I think that was just very effective. It was also nice getting those flashback vehicle quests where you got to see the Lich King fighting Illidan, you got to see the betrayal of his troops and those various things, so I think that was definitely quite cool. There's also a really fascinating plot thread which suggests that Matthias Leher is actually a figment created by Yogg-Saron, and it's backed up in a few different just sort of areas, which it does make sense when you think about it, because the Scourge and Yogg-Saron really didn't like each other, so perhaps killing Arthas' heart would have been a way to weaken him, or something like that. Anyway, just an interesting plot hook I thought I would mention. Then my final honourable mention is going to be a lot of the quests in the Storm Peaks. I think these were often very good story-wise, and I really liked the Muradin and Loken stories. For some reason though, I just don't feel like they make it onto the list. I can't really put my finger on why, but that's just what I feel, and it's my damn list, so take that. Well, with all those honourable mentions done, let's move on to number 1. And coming in at number 1, we have Dragonblight. Oh, freaking Dragonblight, such a good zone, and just such a great example of fantastic quest design. So first of all, the quest started off with the defense/assault on that village, which was under Naxxramas, and then it culminated with the whole attack on the Undercity, and overall, as one arc, this is definitely my favourite bit of questing that Blizzard has ever done. First of all, it started pretty cool. You were defending a town against the undead. There were actually plenty of regular quests here, but there were definitely one or two breaks with a vehicle quest that gave enough variation to always keep the questing rather interesting, which I think was, again, very good. Now, I know that I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but once again, the actual quest objectives, in combination with the world, meant that the story was told through what you were doing. When you first left that keep, running past the defending soldiers, and started attacking the Scourge in the town centre, it made complete sense. You didn't need to pay attention to the lore, you didn't need to invest yourself purposefully in the story, the game would do that for you without you noticing. This trend just continued the whole way through the questline to the point where you couldn't really help but understand what was going on at the end, and just feel invested in the story. Again, just a really good example of a solidly done quest. And actually, I just want to take this opportunity here to say that this effect here that I'm talking about can just be done so much better with darker and more serious quests. I think that some of the more light-hearted things in Mists of Pandaria don't carry enough narrative weight in terms of the actions that you're doing to have this effect, and I think that is one of the reasons why I personally did not enjoy Mist's leveling experience too much. Alright, so next, I think another good thing is that there were some quests which provided a nice break in pace. For example, let's just say the one where you and a team of NPCs would take down the Frostworm. It was a break, literally. You went off somewhere else and did another task, and that was nice because a change of pace is pretty much always a good thing as long as it is well timed. Then I think another great point is the overall number of quests and just the spread of them throughout the zone. They were not hyper-linear to the point where you had absolutely no choice. You could always just fly off to the Wormrest Temple, go somewhere else, do various things like that. So that sense of player agency that reinforces the idea of you being an adventurer was still maintained, which was very good, unlike, say, the Tolong steps in Mists of Pandaria, which were extremely linear and took away the idea of you being an adventurer that was doing things on your own prerogative. Next, there were also just no silly joke quests, and yeah, look, the joke quests can be fun, but in this instance, the quests themselves were very good, and somehow I just think that the more silly style of some of the Mists of Pandaria quests would have ruined the mood a little bit. And of course, the final quest where you head down to the crypt and kill the Lich is both fun, but it also gives just a great opportunity to build up Bolvar as a character. Actually, this whole questline itself did a great job of building up Bolvar as a character, which of course meant that when the Wrathgate happened, it carried all the more weight. And as for the Wrathgate itself, well, it was great in so many levels. First of all, it directly followed on what we were doing, and this meant that it was a part of a story that players were already invested in. Another great thing is that it, once again, gave the Lich King a bit more of a personal touch. This was a storytelling move that would later on basically just pay off during the Icecrown raid, and I think that was a very effective thing that was done throughout the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. Overall though, I just think it was a great way to end this main series of quests. And then finally we have the battle for the Undercity. This was just the kind of, the thing that really played off these quests, I suppose. Anyway, it was a fun little slice of political intrigue that allowed for groups of players to be fighting alongside the faction leaders, which is really very nice on the rare occasions when it does happen, because you hear about these characters all the time, so it's nice to see them voice acted and doing things, you know, all that stuff. It's also the kind of thing that Blizzard would likely, these days, just turn into a single-player scenario, which really makes me sad because doing this event alongside other players was a fantastic part of the charm of it all. It was also nice the way that, well, when you first ported in to do this quest, it would often say, oh yeah, the attack starts in 5 minutes. Now I know this was more of a mechanical thing just to get enough players there, but it did just kind of have the effect of making it feel like this is an attack that is going to happen. It doesn't matter, you know, you're just a part of the attack. You are not the instigator, you are joining in. I think that's what that timer did, and I think the same thing actually applies to the battle in Light's Hope Chapel. But yeah, overall, I just think Dragonblight was fantastic. And it's, I guess, sad that people can't do the battle for the Undercity anymore. I'm not particularly sure their reasoning behind removing it, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, that is it for the video. That's my top 5, and the question is, well, now thrown to you. What's your top 5? And more importantly, why? If you leave a nice, big, interesting comment, then I will be able to throw it into my response video for this one, so hopefully you'll get featured. We can have a bit of a chat about people's ideas, and overall, it should be a good deal of fun. Anyway, that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can check out the various links in the description. That's where you'll find my Twitter account and my Patreon page if you want to help out the channel. And with all of my things pimped, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.